What is up, guys? Randomonium here with your Week 6 Fantasy LCS predictions. This video, I'm going to break down all of the matchups for NA and EU LCS for Week 6. I will be talking about the matches from Week 5, so this is your spoiler warning. But oh my goodness, I thought I had things figured out, and then Week 5 came along and completely destroyed all of my plans. I did do well in a lot of my fantasy leagues, but now I have to really rethink a lot of things with these leagues because it seems like a lot of these teams are really turning it up in the second half of the split, and it's turning into a complete dogfight for a lot of these playoff spots. So let's break things down. So the TLDR for this week, kind of the summary. If you can't watch the entire video, the people that I think are easy points this week are TSM, Immortals, Team Liquid, and then on the EU side, G2, Fnatic, and H2K. But even these teams in this week are not necessarily guaranteed points. This is a very volatile week. So I would strongly encourage you guys to watch the entire video. For the bench warmers, I've got Fox, Energy, and Phoenix, and then Unicorns of Love, Giants, and Roccat. But again, there are certain instances where you may want to play some of those players. And then for the risky teams, I've got CLG, Cloud9, Envy, Apex, Shaka, Splice, Vitality, and Origin. And those are just all over the place. This is a extremely volatile week. I don't know how many times I can reiterate that. But yeah, just be very careful this week. There's a lot of really close matchups that are going to really throw the entire league into disarray. So for my rankings that have been updated from last week, you can see last week's ranking next to the team name. And then I've broken them down into tiers based on their colors. So purple is like S tier, red's A tier, blue is B tier, and green is C tier. So in NA, I still have TSM and Immortals at my top two spots. I do feel like they are the strongest teams in NA. I now have Team Liquid as number 3. Team Liquid looks really freaking good. Really freaking good. I thought that they were going to lose both of their games last week. They were playing up against Envy and Cloud9. I thought they were going to lose a close game to Envy, and they wound up winning pretty easily. But what's even more surprising is how well they played against Cloud9. They wound up winning the series 2-1, but they were winning one of the games really hard, and then a bug happened that allowed Cloud9 to remake the game per the rules. But Team Liquid was definitely going to win that game. They were up like 5-1 or something like that. So I really consider that series a 3-1 series. I don't think that's a 2-1 series because it's very obvious that Team Liquid was going to win that game. Then they got unlucky and were forced to remake the game, and then they won the game again anyway. So very impressive Team Liquid. That's why they're the number 3 spot now. Cloud9 drops down to number 4. Envy is number 5. CLG number 6. And then I have Apex at that number 7 spot. Energy was able to beat Echo Fox, so they move up to the number 8 spot. And then we have Echo Fox and Phoenix at the bottom. Over on the EU side, I have G2 as the top dog. They're standing alone at the top of the hill on the EU side, and the rest of EU is in complete turmoil. I still have H2K and Fnatic at the number 3 and number 2 spots, respectively. But even those are kind of shaky at this point, in my opinion. And then the rest of the teams, you see that they're all the same color, because I really don't know where they belong. It really just depends on the day. It just depends on who shows up. Every single one of those teams has the ability to beat every other team on that list. But right now I've got Shaka at number 4, then Splice and Origin at 5 and 6. Giants has moved up because they beat Fnatic last week. Very impressive. So they are now in the number 7 spot, and they could move up a lot higher this week if they play as well as they did last week. And then I have Vitality, Unicorns of Love, and Roccat finishing out the list. But all of these teams are really kind of neck and neck in my mind, and it really just depends on who better executes the early game and who comes in with a better pick man phase and a better strategy. All right, crucial matchups for this week, and there are a lot of them. Over on NA, TSM versus Cloud9. I'm looking for Cloud9 to bounce back. I don't think that they will beat TSM, but I'm looking for Cloud9 to at least have a strong showing after they had a very poor week 5. Team Liquid versus Immortals. Immortals has looked phenomenal, except against TSM. I'm looking for Team Liquid to challenge Immortals and possibly take that match to 3 games. If Team Liquid can do that, then they really solidify their spot at the number 3 position. Also, we have CLG versus Envy, kind of rounding out those lower playoff spots. We need to figure out who's going to be getting those final couple playoff spots. And then NRG versus Apex, also kind of still in that contention for a playoff spot. They're kind of knocking on that door, the number 7 spot. So definitely looking at that matchup to see who's going to be possibly able to challenge for some of those last playoff spots. Over in EU, there are so many close matchups this week. We have Schalke versus H2K. H2K on paper is the better team, but they've looked very inconsistent. Splice versus Unicorns of Love, another toss-up. Unicorns of Love versus Origin. Schalke versus Splice. Origin versus Vitality, and even H2K versus Giants. Giants looked phenomenal last week. I haven't believed in them before, but they've been proving me wrong. If they can have a strong week 6, it's going to be absolutely huge for them. They will be in a great spot for playoff contention. If they can take at least one game off of H2K, then I definitely think that they're going to make the playoffs this split. All right, nomenclature. If the win, tie, or loss is in white, that means I think it's going to be a normal game, normal point values. If it's in red, that means I think it's going to be a stomp, which usually means that the teams will get less points than normal, even the team that wins. The exception to this is for the team points, where if a team stomps, they usually have higher team points than average. And then if it is in blue, that means I think that the game is going to be very close or a potential upset. This usually means higher point values for both teams, but obviously the team that wins gets more points than the team that loses. So it's a little bit of a higher risk scenario. Additionally, next to each player, I have 2 letters. The first letter is what I thought they were going to be last week. The second letter is what they actually were last week as far as their tier. This allows you to fact check me and see how well I did in previous weeks. So for the teams, my S tier teams this week are going to be G2, Immortals, TSM, and Fnatic. I think all of those teams will go 2-0 this week. Fnatic had a horrible week last week. I think they will rebound strong. For A tier, I have Liquid, CLG, and Cloud9, who I all think are going to go 1-1. But I think that they're going to have close games and definitely kind of challenge even when they lose. For B tier, I have Envy, Origin, and Splice. Envy, I think, will go 1-1. I think both Origin and Splice will have 2 ties, no wins, no losses, but they do have the potential to win those games. C tier, I have Schalke, H2K, Giants, Apex, and EchoFox. Giants performed exceptionally well last week. This week they have G2 and H2K, possibly the hardest week you could have. I'm looking for them to make a strong showing against H2K and tie them. I don't think they're going to be able to take the game off of G2, but if they are able to, that is going to speak wonders for their team and wonders for their playoff potential. And then finally in D tier, I have Unicorns of Love, Vitality, NRG, Phoenix One, and Roccat. Moving on to top lane, my S tier top laners are going to be Huni, Expect, Gamsu, and Hanser. All of these teams have very strong weeks. For A tier, Seraph, Odoame, Impact. Impact had a poor week 5, but he actually did much better than the rest of his team. So I do have him at A tier. For B tier, I have Ray, Wonder, and Steve. I don't think there's going to be any questions there. Moving on to C tier, I have Lorlo, Smitty J, Vivasachi, Parang, and Cabochard. Lorlo was up in A tier last week. That was when Team Liquid went 2-0. This week, I think they are going to go 1-1. And Lorlo typically doesn't get that many points when his team doesn't win. So I think that'll drop him down to C tier. And then for D tier, I have Zig, Soaz, Quas, KFO, and Darshan. All right, in the jungle, my S tier this week is going to be Trick, Yankos, Reignover, and Spirit. Don't think there's any questions there. Pretty much the same as we've seen in the top lane and teams. For A tier, I have Svenskeren, Dardoch, and Gilius. As Dardoch goes, so does Team Liquid. So I think he will have around an A tier week. They are going up against Immortals, but I am looking for Liquid to at least be competitive against Immortals. For B tier, I have Meteos, Shrimp, and Trashy. Both Meteos and Trashy had very poor week fives. I'm looking for them to rebound. I think they will return back to being B or better. C tier, I have Proxen, Maxlore, Xmithy, Move, and Shook. Both Proxen and Maxlore had very good week fives. They were both S tier. I think they are going to struggle this week. Envy is going up against Immortals, and they're going to have they're going to struggle against CLG. I think that they can beat them, but I think it's going to be a close fought game, and they do have the potential to get upset and lose. And then Giants with Maxor has G2 and H2K, and I think that they're going to struggle in those games. And then for D tier, I have Amazing, Airwalks, Hard, Santorin, and Inori. Moving on to mid lane, I have Bjergsen, Pobelter, Fevin, and Perks as my top four. The reason why Perks is not higher is because I think that G2 is going to stomp Rockhat, which is going to result in Perks not getting as many fantasy points. For A tier, I have Jensen, Phoenix, and Froggen. Froggen played phenomenal on Echo Fox. I know Echo Fox has really been struggling as a team, but even though Echo Fox struggled last week, Froggen was S tier. That's amazing. So I have him at A tier this week, even though I think that his team will go 1-1. He just has been playing really phenomenal, definitely carrying his team very hard. For B tier, I have Fox, Ryu, and Senkux. I don't think there's going to be any questions there. All those teams I think are going to get ties mainly, but they do have the potential to pick up a win or two here or there. C tier, I have Knight, Power of Evil, Ninja, Keen, and Huhi. And then for D tier, I have Betsy, Exile, Anukduk, Pyrene, and GBM. Alright, for AD carry, I have Doublelift, Reckles, Sven, and Wild Turtle. I don't think there's any surprises there. Fnatic had a horrible week 5. Sven was actually one of the lowest point scorers for AD carry, but I think he will rebound and he'll have a strong week 6. For A tier, I have Laud, Sneaky, and Freeze. Laud played incredibly well, even though Envy had a difficult week. And Sneaky did not do as well. He was definitely a D tier last week, but I think the Cloud9 will rebound strong in this week. For B tier, I have Fabi, Miseralis, and Kabi. I am putting Fabi up here. I think he's going to be the starter. He's been the starter for the past couple weeks. The way that you can check whether it's going to be Fabi or Piglet is you can tune in to Team Liquid Academy, which is the challenger team, and see who is playing on that team. And whoever's playing on that team is not going to be starting for LCS because you can't start for a challenger team and an LCS team in the same week. For C tier, I have Sunstar, Xpeke, 6A, Steelback, and Keith. Steelback and Sunstar did really well last week. However, I think they're going to struggle a lot harder this week. Both of those teams are going up against a G2. Which I think is going to definitely reduce their fantasy points this week. Then for D tier, I have Apollo, Police, Veritas, MASH, and OHQ. Finally, for supports, for my S tier, I have Biofrost, Yellowstar, Mithy, and Adrian. I don't think there are going to be too many questions with that S tier picks. For A tier, I have Spraddle, Matt, and Hakuo. Spraddle's actually been one of the top fantasy point scorers for support, even though Shaka has been kind of a more middle tier team. Matt's been doing a lot better on Team Liquid, and then Envy has been doing very well. Laud's been hard carrying, and that's allowed Hakuo to get more fantasy points. For B tier, I have Vander, Mickey X and Hustlin. I don't think there's going to be too many things there. Hustlin was actually S tier last week, but I am dropping him down to B tier this week. He might even be as low as C tier this week. For C tier, I have Smoothie, Big, X-Special, Hybrid, and Raise. I know people are going to say, well, Smoothie deserves to be higher than C tier for Cloud9, and yes, I agree. But he was D tier last week, and he's only going to probably play 3 out of the 6 games this week, maximum. Same with Bunny Fufu. They both only play half the games, which means they only get half the points. So they have to perform really, really well in order to be, A tier or B tier. And this week they're going up against TSM, which I think is going to be difficult for them to get that many fantasy points with only half the games. And then for D tier, I have Kasing, Hillisang, Aframu, Kiwi Kid, and Gate. So yet again, in summary, to be perfectly honest, there really aren't any easy points or bench warmers. It's all risky plays this week. But if I have to narrow it down to a couple of teams that are easy points, it's got to be TSM Immortals and Team Liquid, and then G2 Fnatic and H2K. If I'm going to tell you guys to avoid certain teams, it's got to be Fox, Energy, Phoenix One, and then Unicorns Love Giants and Rockhat. And then the rest of the teams are risky, but really all the teams are risky. There are some situations where you might want to play Giants and you might want to bench H2K or a bunch of the other teams. So just be very careful. Really think about your fantasy teams this week. Try to diversify your lineups as much as possible. Don't play like all the same players from one team because it's going to be an extremely volatile week. So you want to try to minimize your risk, diversify your team so that if one team does worse than you expect them to, you don't completely destroy your chances at winning this week. So play safe, diversify your team. As a question for you guys, let me know which game you enjoyed from week 5. Let me know what your favorite game is from week 5. Or let me know if you learned anything from the games in week 5 with your comments. And I'll try to make sure that I do a Learn from the LCS video this week. I didn't get much inspiration from week 4, so I didn't do one. But I'm going to go back and watch some of the games again and see if I can get some inspiration to do a Learn from the LCS video this week. So I hope you guys all enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you like the content on the channel, please subscribe. Please share it with your friends. Definitely trying to hopefully get above 200 subscribers by the end of this split. That would be fantastic. And definitely leave me your questions or your comments. I'll be happy to answer them. I hope you all have a great day. This is Randomonium signing off.